There comes a point in everyone's life when our contentment and routines are disrupted by God. It might start off as a faint whisper or a nagging feeling, but deep down inside, God is kindling a fire within us. We can try to shut it out and ignore His calling, or we can embrace the disturbance God's placed within us. But whether we fight for it or against it, each of us must choose what to do when God interrupts our lives.
Every talk, every sermon you've ever been a part of, you're paying close attention right now, and then that wanes as time goes on. And then by the end of it, we're all ready to land the plane, me included, and get out of here, right? But so while you're paying attention, I want you to just answer this one question for me. You don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to show hands or anything. But just think of this. What if I were to come up to you and I said to you, hey, I have a mission or a task or a specific thing that I want you to do, and that I know that you're perfect for it, and that I would help prepare you to be able to do it. I mean, like, there'd be probably some parts of you that go, okay, I believe you. I believe that you have a task for me. I'm not positive I can do it, but I believe that maybe I could, or maybe you could help me get that figured out, right? But because I'm just a human being and just like you, we just kind of see things, you might kind of have a tendency to believe it and may even be willing to participate in it. But here's this question. What if I were to tell you that God, like the sovereign creator of the universe who knows everything, what if I were to tell you that God has a mission for you, specifically you, to live out in your life, and that He will not only call you to it, but He'll give you everything that you need to accomplish it? What was that thought that just went through your head? I mean, you had this thought, this immediate thought that was like, maybe he means the guy behind me, or maybe this is like kindergarten graduation. Everybody's got one, so, it's not that important, right? It's like kindergarten graduation is that way. Everybody's special, so really nobody is, So we just kind of have this thing that kind of goes out. Or did you feel like this? Like a little bit of disqualification popped up. Oh, yeah, maybe when I was younger, that would have been the case. Or maybe if I were older, that would be the case. Or maybe if I were more talented, that would be the case. Or if I had better influence, or if I could be in front of people. Or maybe you feel like there's this little part of you that goes, man, if I could this or that, maybe I could accomplish something that would be great. Or maybe there's a little bit of disqualification that comes in and is like, oh, yeah, if I didn't have that part of my story, if I'd have never done that, if I wouldn't have gotten involved with those people or that person, or if I wouldn't have done this or that thing, and if there's this period of story in my life that I wish I could just kind of grab and edit and forget it happened, then maybe I could see what you're saying. But not me. What if I told you that everybody feels that way? Like that every single person in this room, when they started thinking about the fact that the sovereign God of the universe calls them to something and He'll prepare them and give them everything that they need to do it, that every single person in this room feels at some level like they're not qualified to do it. And it happens to all of us. In fact, every one of us at some point in our life are comfortable, and something happens that catalyzes us towards action, and then that disqualification comes in, or that distraction comes in, and we wind up sidelined in the process because we believe that message from the enemy. We never get to action, or if we do, we get to it late. It's the same process that happens over and over again in all throughout Scripture, all throughout history, right? Every single person who's ever done anything to a family, to a nation, to a time period, to a race of people, or to any story in Scripture, we see it over and over again. They're in some level of comfort. They experience some sort of catalyzing moment in their life, some call, something that disrupts them, something that says, everything goes Popeye for a minute. I've had alls I can stand, and I can't stand no more. I don't know. Does anybody else remember that? Okay. And they get to that moment where they catalyze, and then we hear that distracting word that pulls us off into distraction before we ever get to action. Comfort, catalyst, distraction, action. Over and over and over again. This isn't brain surgery, folks, right? This isn't something that we came up with that's so amazing and so insightful it's just how life works, right? You're comfortable, you want to do something, you got to first be catalyzed out of it. And most of us experience some kind of distraction. It happens over and over again in our lives. We get caught up in it, and some of us never get on to the point where we experience action in our life because we're stuck. And if you're stuck, you're either stuck in comfort or distraction. Isn't that the truth? I mean, like in your life, if you feel stuck, you're either stuck because you're too comfortable or you're stuck in that distraction. You're either stuck in realizing, man, I don't really want to risk all of this so that I can do that, right? Or you're stuck in that distraction, that disqualification, that sin, that brokenness, that part of our story that we kind of took the left turn and wound up in Albuquerque, right? To quote Bugs Bunny, right? So like you guys are going to have to laugh at stuff. You can't have wasted all your laughs on Steve's stupid jokes, although the crack one was hilarious. Okay. But anyways, so we got all these things that go on in our life that distract us, keep us from acting, and we got to keep going. Man, it's Father's Day weekend, so I've spent a lot of time this week just thinking about my role as a dad, you know? I have 3 beautiful daughters, Sheila and I. Just so proud of them. Like, it's crazy, right? Marissa's 19 years old. Michaela is 17 years old. Maya is 14 years old. Like, it's just amazing. But I look at them and there's so much that as a dad I want for them, right? I mean, isn't that how it is? You got kids and you want for them so much. There's so little that I want really from them. But man, of all the things that I want for them, the thing I most want for them is that they never feel stuck in their faith. That they never feel that disqualified voice that comes in and says, you're not good enough, strong enough, talented enough, that you don't have what it takes. I don't want them to ever listen to that voice. I never want them to feel like they're so comfortable in today that they can't move on to what God's got for them next. I never want them to experience that. And I'm guessing that as I look around and I see you nod your heads, that I hear that from you as well. That nobody in this room wants their kids to ever feel like they're not good enough or not strong enough or can't for some reason to feel disqualified. We never want to see our kids live in that place. When I look through Scripture, I see stories of families that don't make a ton of sense to me, to be honest with you. If you think the pages of Scripture are boring, I understand why, because you've probably heard them read to you in some sort of boring way. But when you turn the pages of Scripture and you read those stories, they are crazy. Some of them are nuts. Like, some of them you read them and like, man, rednecks have been around a lot longer than I thought, right? There are some pretty crazy things. There's this one story of Samson who beats up, we're going to talk about it in a couple weeks, he beats up 300 people with the jawbone of a donkey. What's not redneck about that, okay? It's crazy stuff, but you keep rolling through there, and there are countless Scripture passages where you read about dads that make decisions that make no sense. I look at it and I go, where does that come in? How is that a rational way to deal with the circumstances? Or moms who make terrible decisions that take their kids in totally different directions, or brothers who fight against each other, connive, deceive, and try to kill and even kill each other. It's crazy stuff. But throughout all of those, there are some stories where you're like, man, they knock it out of the park, and some stories where they struggle. One of those stories that I love is in the book of Esther. The book of Esther is a unique little book. It's 10 chapters long. It literally is a story of Esther, this girl. Her Hebrew name is Hannessah. And Hannessah's story just kind of goes on, and it just tells this beautiful, powerful story of her influence and her craziness. Now, here's the deal. What's crazy about it is it's a book in the Bible. You know, it doesn't mention God even one time. God's not mentioned at all. Not the Lord, not God, not the Creator. All those things he's alluded to a few times. There's a lot of time, but he's never directly mentioned in this story. The story starts out with a girl. Her name is Hannessah, and Hannessah is a beautiful girl. I have 3 of them, right? But we probably have, if you've ever heard of Queen Esther, you probably have some imagination, some picture in your mind. And if I had to pull the room, I would bet that you probably would guess her somewhere in her 20s or 30s or maybe even 40s. But the truth is, she's probably about 12. She's probably in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 years old, Esther. Hannessah, this Hebrew girl who's beautiful, and even says that she has a shapely figure. She's just beautiful young lady, right? And there's this part of it that plays out in this story that kind of gets this pretty amazing piece of it, because her uncle, it's really not her uncle, it's her cousin. Her cousin Mordecai is influential in life, because around 12 or 13 years old, her parents are in exile from the children of Israel, and they're out on their own and they die. And Mordecai loves Esther, loves Hannessah, and adopts her and raises her as his own child. And then there comes this problem, that we have this issue in our lives, right? Because I know that when I look around this room, I know of our family dynamics. They're all different. Some of you were in the room, right? Dads, we were in the room. When our spouse birthed the child, right? Like, they did the birth. You look at it and go, baby, that looks like it hurts. That you were there when that happened, maybe, right? And you watched them as the baby went from yellow to pink to like green and blue and like all the colors of the rainbow. And they said, here's your bag of Skittles. And they handed you the baby burrito all rolled up, right? Some of you were there for that. Others of you weren't. Your children were birthed in another place and you didn't know them. You wanted them badly. You looked forward to it. You anticipated it the same ways in all the paper pregnancy of adoption, right? And then you got to hold your baby on the gotcha day, some point after their birth, whether a minute or 10 years, doesn't matter. You came through that same thing. Others of you entered into a parenting relationship through another relationship. You said I do and put together a family, and while you're not their biological parent, you may not even be their legal parent, maybe not even be a guardian. You're a person who cares for them and loves them in an unbelievable way. Our families all look so different, their family certainly looked different. Hannessah raised by her parents in exile and were killed, and then ultimately raised by her cousin who adopted her into his family and loved her as his own. Understand something, parents. Your job is not to have raised them since birth. It's to raise them from this point forward. It doesn't matter how you came to the circumstances you came to. Because when we see Mordecai's story, he cared and loved Esther as if it was his own child, and it was really his uncle's daughter, right? And that's a big deal, because we come into our families from a lot of different ways. So understand something. When we walk through this story, there are things that every one of us can learn. And not just fathers, right? Usually the bad news about Father's Day is that we bring you in here and we tell you how bad you're doing and you walk out thanking me. I love Father's Day. It's the most sadistic holiday of the year, right? Because Mother's Day, we go, you're awesome, you're amazing. We celebrate moms, give it up for moms. And dads, we bring you in here, tell you you're terrible at it. You need to pray more, you need to love more, you need to do this more. We just basically kick you where it counts. And then you walk out going, thank you, I really needed to hear that, right? That's how we do it, okay? But that's not really what's going on today, because we're walking through this. There's stuff that all of us can learn, because we as parents have a responsibility. And if you're here and you're not a parent, I want you to know something. This stuff tells stories for us too, because the truth is, whether you're a parent or not doesn't really matter. We live this stuff out the way we see it modeled for us. And the truth is that you, even if you don't have children, are influential in people's lives. People at work, a niece or a nephew, a friend. It doesn't matter if they're older or younger than you. You have influence in their life. And if you live out influence, this is the kind of stuff that happens. So understand something of what's going on. This story centers around a selfish king. His name is King Xerxes, okay? I'm going to call him King Jerxes because he's kind of a jerk, right? Like, he kind of does his own thing. I think it goes with the territory of being king. But he throws a party, right? A big, gigantic party. Some of you are like, I know parties, right? This is my area of expertise, right? Some of you are like nodding. I see your head. Okay, but this isn't kind of any weekend party, right? This isn't just like a weekend bender. This is 180 days, 6 months of straight party. Some of you are like, that ain't nothing, right? I have a whole period of time I don't remember, right? But we go through this party, 6 months of partying. This is how amazing the party was. When the party finished, he threw another party to celebrate the ending of the first party. This party was a week-long party to celebrate the end of a 6-month-long party. And the Bible even says, this is pretty great, because like it says, the drinks, clearly not water, were being served in every fashion, every amazing goblet, every pretty shape and size. Everybody's like, I don't care. I'll drink out of a red Solo cup. It doesn't matter to me, right? Like, so, come on, you know that's funny. All right, so, so he goes on about all this stuff, about this huge party that's going on. And at the end of it, he throws this other party, and things have been going well for 6 months, and he's expended all of the entertainment he can expend. And he finally gets to this point where he's completely inebriated, and he just says, you know what? You guys got to see my wife. That's never a good way to party, okay? So he says, you guys see my wife, and he summons Queen Vashti, right? Now, in first service, I said the booze were flowing. And my wife came to me, did you say boobs were flowing? Because that's what he literally says. No, I did not. Okay, so he goes in, he summons Vashti and says, I want you to do a dance to put everything else on display. You get what I'm saying now. So like she comes in and like he says, I want you to come and do this. And she's stuck. It's the definition of a catch-22. There's nothing that she can do to win. Because if she chooses to do this kind of dance, if she chooses to do what he's asking her to do, then what she's doing is unseemly of a queen, and she'll be dethroned. She is no longer queen if she does it. But if she doesn't do it, she's going to be dethroned because she's disobeying the king. So no matter what she does, do it or don't. But she chooses to not dishonor the office of the queen and says, I'm not gonna give in to your drunken stupidity. And she chooses it, and she winds up being dethroned. About 6 months or so goes by, and the king starts to miss Vashti because he is King Xerxes, and the whole world revolves around him. And so he gets to this part where he's really discouraged, and he calls together kind of the people, the advisors, the people around him a lot. And he says, what should I do? I really miss her. I really want her back, or I really want her around. And so they come up with this bright idea. They're not rocket scientists for sure, because look what they said. It says, so his personal attendant suggested, let us search the entire empire to find beautiful young virgins. Now, when I heard this as a kid, okay, when I heard the story, they said that it was like a beauty pageant. This is not a beauty pageant, okay? This is exactly what it sounds like. It's trafficking. He traffics young girls to his own palace because he's that kind of selfish person, right? So understand something. They go to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women to the royal harem, to this place called Susa. And then it goes on. Haggai, this person that's in charge of stuff, Haggai, the king's eunuch. Now you understand why eunuchs are important, right? They oversee scores of young virgins. Google it, you'll figure it out. While they see that there are all these beautiful women, after that, the young woman who pleases the king the most, you get what's going on between the lines, right? I mean, like, they're going to be put through this for a year. They're going to be summoned, taken from their home, put into the palace, which, yes, it's a pretty place, but it's not a place they're at by choice. And they're placed into this, and they're treated well, right? They're given like back rubs and facials and all that. Now that sounds pampering, right? Except for the fact that you realize at the end of this, it's just to make me look beautiful, so that one man can decide whether I'm the most beautiful or if I'm just cast off to the side. It's terrible. And in this story is Hanessa. Now, she's got her uncle or her cousin. It gets confusing sometimes, though, the translation pieces, so I keep messing it up in my head. But her cousin comes up to her and says, listen, he's a conspiracy theorist. Does anybody know any conspiracy theorists? Scott Holloway, who like to, they're the people who know behind what's going on behind stuff, right? They're like, you see this, but there's really this going on. And then really what you don't know about is this and these people and those people, and that guy knows this guy, and they're, okay. Mordecai's kind of like that. He's always got his ear to the ground. He always knows stuff that nobody else knows just yet, right? He has always got that idea, this theory, this thing that's going on behind the scenes. And it's always that way. And so he says to Hanessa long before the whole story begins, listen, I don't want you to use your Hebrew name. Don't use Hannessah. Use Esther. Use your Gentile name. And don't tell anybody that you're a Jew. Just keep it to yourself, because there's lots of stuff buzzing around the community and stuff in the backlogs. I know what's going on behind the scenes, and I just don't want you to ever see pain like this. So just keep it to yourself. So she does. She starts using Esther. She doesn't tell anybody about who she is and what's going on. And so as a result, when the king summons for all of these beautiful virgins, she gets picked. Now, that may not sound very kind. Maybe you'd think, man, she should have used her regular name and she wouldn't be chosen that way. But what would have happened was that the people who chose would have said, well, those are my girls, right? Those are my young virgins. The good ones go on. You're not even good enough for that. So again, this catch-22 meets her, and she's broken, scared. She's a kid. She's not some amazing bastion of faith. She's not Daniel, right? I mean, like, we know Daniel's story. If you're familiar with it at all, Daniel gets in the king's palace, and the king says, listen, you're going to feed these guys the very best food from my table. They're going to eat the best and look the best, and they're going to be the best of the best. And Daniel says, no, I'm not into that. I'm going to trust what God says, and I'm going to eat what God tells me to eat, and only that. And he stands up for his faith. Esther's not that story. Esther is scared. She's a kid. She's a terrified girl who's being taken away from her family and the people who love her, and she's being trafficked for the pleasure of the king. And it's a terrible instance to even imagine. She steps out of comfort and into this palace that seems from the outside like it's comfortable, but it's very much not comfortable, because there's all kinds of drama. There's this guy named Haman, and Haman's like, God, he's just bent on hurting Mordecai and killing the Jews. He just is bent about it. And there's these guys that along the way, I remember I told you Mordecai has this kind of ear to the ground, insider thing. He's got this conspiracy theory that's going on behind the scenes all the time. And he sees what's going on with these one of the king's servants. He hears that they have a plot to kill the king. And so he tells Esther. Esther tells the king, and it saves the king's life, and he credits Mordecai. So there's all this drama. This is a kid stuck in the middle of all this drama, just swirling around her. Mordecai is hated by this man, Haman. And Haman kind of puts together a whole plot, not only to kill Mordecai, but all of the Jews, right? So he puts this whole thing together, and he takes these things, we'll look at them kind of like dice, and he rolls the dice. They're called Purim. And these Purim things are actually the way that we know of this. There's a festival today that Hebrews celebrate called the Festival of Purim. It's 2 days celebrating the salvation of the Jews from Haman's plan. It's really a beautiful story, all kind of rolled out in front of it. But Haman rolls the dice, picks this day where all of the Jews are going to be slaughtered. And of course, Mordecai hears about it. Mordecai hears about it, and he kind of knows about the deal because he's got his ear to the ground, and he goes to Esther and he says, man, Esther, you got to know this is a big deal. And he just kind of lays out the whole story of this conspiracy behind the scenes of Esther, of Mordecai, and knows about Haman, and he tells Haman's he's going to kill all the Jews on this specific day, and she lays it all out, and he says to her, you've got to go tell the king. And it had to run through her mind because she's probably 15 or 16 at this point, somewhere in that neighborhood. And she says to him, if not in words, in her mind for sure, she says, when I went to him the first time, it was to save his life. Now it's to save the life of a bunch of people that he said it was okay to kill. And if I go in to tell him this stuff and he doesn't raise his scepter to me, I'll be dead before I get the first word out. You don't just go in to see the king. This is all crazy. It's all ridiculous. And remember, she's a kid. She's going in from nothing, scared, terrified, manipulated, and trafficked. And now she's supposed to risk the very little bit of comfort that she has to bring salvation to the Jews. But what's amazing is Mordecai's words back to her. I mean, his response to her is powerful. He says this, look, the king's, it says, Mordecai sent this copy to Esther, and he said this, don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace that you will escape all the Jews being killed. I mean, he knows, like, listen, it's going to come out who you are. It's going to come out your heritage. Hey, listen, I know things, and it's going to come out. If you keep quiet, this is such a beautiful thing. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from somewhere else. God's going to save us. We are God's chosen people. This is who we are. If you keep quiet, salvation will come from another place, but you and your relatives will die. Mordecai loves her. He loves her, and he just says to her, listen, understand something. It's going to cost you everything. You're in another bad spot again. It's going to cost you everything, but I want you to understand it doesn't all ride on you, because I believe that God is big enough. Salvation will come from somewhere for the Jews. He's confident in it. And what I love about it is he stands up and he tells this young lady, listen, I want you to know something. I'm living it out. And you know what I love? And that's the most important thing, is that our job isn't to be perfect. Our job is to model faith, parents. Our job is to model faith in front of our children, to give them the confidence to follow Jesus. I was just in first service. I had this young man. I said, hey, Jason Eads. I don't know if you know Jason or not, but Jason's been around for a long time. I said, Jason, is your son Samuel going to be in church for first service? And he said, no, he wasn't going to be. He was going to be with junior high kids. And he said, should I get him in there? I said, oh yeah, you definitely should, because I'm going to show a picture of him. This is the picture right here. This is his son Samuel outside mowing the lawn yesterday. And the reason I said that, I said, hey, listen, I asked him to be in here so I could point out Samuel mowing the lawn yesterday, but the reality is, what I want to do is brag on Jason. Because Jason he is a faithful servant. He's constantly doing stuff. When we built the building, we put the garbage bag on it and all this other stuff that we do around here. Like, we put all this stuff together. Jason spent more time here than any of the trades. He was here more than the electricians. He was here every day. He had back surgery, and like 5 days later was here doing stuff, painting things, doing everything he could do. We're always like, Jason, you can't do that. You just had surgery. He's like, oh, I'm fine. That's just how he is. He's constantly doing that. But he's constantly modeling for his son, Samuel, that faith matters, that servanthood matters, being a solid guy matters, and he models it for him. So yesterday, when I drive by, I'm going to do a wedding, and I drive by, and who's out here? Jason's mowing the front yard, and his son Samuel's on the tractor mowing the side. And it's just amazing, because he's living out exactly what I'm talking about. Not that, hey, I got things to do, and I got other stuff to do, and it's hot, and I get all those things. He was modeling faith for his son. And his son gets the picture clearly. Man, that's what Father's Day is about. You're doing exactly the same thing, all you dads. I mean, you deserve like a huge attaboy, because you got up this morning, you put on your clothes, and you made it to church, and you drug your family here with you. You could have easily, it would have been so simple today, right? To go, what do you want to do? It's Father's Day. Well, you know what? I'd like to sleep in. I'll just sleep in for a little while, and then maybe we'll, go golf a little bit, and maybe we'll cook something on the grill and do something like that. It'd be so simple to be at home or to be at the lake today, wouldn't it? But you're here. And that matters. You know why it matters? Because you're modeling faith for your kids. You're showing the people behind you that are looking up to you that there are more important things than being completely selfish. That's what Mordecai was showing her in the world of King Xerxes, that there are more important things to live for than just you. And her story, like when he charges her with that and says, listen, if not from you, the salvation will come from somewhere, because God has got this. He modeled it for her, just like you're modeling it for her now. Keep doing that. Because if you don't, you can't say these next words. The next words that he says are famous. Is the next passage of the verse. He says, who knows, Esther, if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this.